You're listening to Business Insights podcast from myself, Mark Powney at Business News Wales. On this series, I'll be interviewing a variety of guests covering the issues on everyone's mind, in particular coronavirus. To discuss this and more, I'm joined today by David Chapman, Executive Director for Wales for UKHospitality, the trade board representing the UK's hospitality sector. Thanks for joining us, David.
Thank you.
So the hospitality sector is clearly a sector that's going to be hit one of the hardest in this current crisis. Not pretty reading, obviously, but please give us an overview of the situation in the sector.
Well, the last 10 days has been absolutely savage. We've had reports from every part of Wales of different businesses who have been catastrophically hit by the measures that have had to be introduced over the last 10 days. It's meant that there's been a cliff edge fall off in visitors to pubs, hotels, and also it's created a severe cash flow problem. But I'm in regular contact with members, so I can pass that information on to government in the hope of seeking some support from government for their businesses. And we're getting figures, for instance, that a very major Welsh hotel employer had on March the 1st a 74% occupancy, which this week is down to 54, or last week was down to 54, and is now looking at 20% and falling down in that sort of rapid decline over a matter of just days. So it's absolutely astonishing, and it's causing huge worry to people who are running businesses.
I was going to say the hospitality sector, I mean, it represents, am I right in saying 10% of UK employment and 5% of GDP? Any indication of how this might be affected over the coming months?
Well, I mean, our resource is that, we're a people industry. Our resource is all about the people that we have who are dealing directly with the customers that we service. And when the customers aren't there and there isn't the work to do it, obviously the business runs short of funds. And that means that we're in danger of losing our key people. And, as an industry, if you look at our chart of success over the last 5-6 years, we've been adopting all of the measures the government have asked for in terms of minimum wage and adopting national living wage and boosting the support for employees. And we've been increasing year on year by percentages of the number of people working in the industry. So up until this, it's been a really successful story. And I hope that, we've armed up an awful lot of people to have long-term careers, that they use the social skills that they develop with us in jobs throughout their life and in hospitality businesses throughout their life. But the position now is that if there are no funds coming through the door in any way, then a business has to be able to look and see what it can do to survive the short term, and that obviously will impact on the people it employs. So it's an extremely worrying position for a group of employers that I know well, who are most concerned over their family of people who work for them. And it's disturbing. It really is disturbing because it's an emotional as well as a commercial impact.
Absolutely. In terms of that funding, obviously it's funding that's going to be available. I think, details are still starting to come out. Should that funding go to some of these hospitality businesses or to perhaps the people who are being laid off? Where do you think that money should be prioritised?
Well, we're looking at short, medium and long-term solutions, aren't we? And in particular, short-term solution. I mean, what we need to have is the infrastructure that we've got at the moment of hospitality businesses right across Wales. And a point I'd like to make here is that we are an exceptional industry. And if you look at some of our sort of iconic premises, which I'm sure you will know from business conferences and from leisure visits, places like the Metropole and St Bride's in Saundersfoot and the Llandudno Group Inn and Lake Burnley Hotel and Spa and the Celtic Manor. These are all really major institutions in their area. They're more than just a sort of a service. They actually provide a community base. They provide obviously a large amount of local employment, directly local employment, but they also have a huge impact on subsidiary spending. I mentioned St Bride's. I know Andrew, the MD there, would be very keen for me to be able to put forward that, in a year he spends at least $750,000 with local suppliers, and that's like butchers and fishmongers and greengrocers. Besides the construction work that is needed to be done every year to keep the offer up to date and competitive with product in this country and other countries. That's a huge amount. Now, there are other businesses that run on the basis of shareholders and taking money out of localities, but our businesses actually reinvest in their local areas. And so this is not a simple, one business goes down and that's the end of it. This is a knock-on domino effect, but it has a much more bigger impact on cultural and um, uh, local, getting under the skin of the locality, wherever it may be, whether it's in Gwynedd or Pembrokeshire or Monmouthshire. In fact, if I just mentioned some counties there, but the research that we did a few years back shows that I think in Gwynedd and in Pembrokeshire, 1 in 4 people are dependent on our industry for their livelihood, and because of these knock-on effects. So that's why this is particularly disturbing. And that's why it's essential that they're in place, all of them, when this crisis is over. And that's why the measures should be put into investing in their businesses and then therefore investing into the people that they work for, rather than allowing those businesses to go and lose in the long term viability of not only the businesses but the communities.
You referenced there obviously the foundational economy, if you like. Do you think some of the larger hospitality firms have the ability to withstand the crisis? Do you foresee some of them becoming a major victim of the whole thing?
Yes, I do. I think it's highly likely that we will lose some really big name, multi-generational businesses if this crisis goes on, and if the funding support that is needed for these businesses isn't got right as we go along. And they're cash flow businesses. They work on very small margins nowadays. Their cost base is enormous. It was particularly escalated 2 years ago when the business rates revaluation impacted. That made a huge problem for our industry, with in some cases, 200% increases being applied. And it was galling to see what I consider is, and described as community businesses, people who work with people in local areas, having to pay out more than the businesses that had come on the scene late within the business rates environment, like the internet-based businesses and some of the more, building-free businesses that have evolved over the last 10 years. So, the cost base is huge for us, and I think this will show. This crisis will show just how much we are paying over. I think one of our members identified the fact there were 16 different taxes they were paying. We pay 20% VAT on all product, which the public has to pay, which is third highest, I think, in Europe, and is way higher than some of the countries that are famous for tourism, like Italy and France. As a result, margins are crushed because people in Wales don't have as much money in their pocket as people do in the southeast or the wealthier areas. And so when they go out for a meal, they've got a certain amount of money they can spend and no more. So the price sensitivity is at one end. Underneath, the cost base is rising. The margins are being squeezed everywhere. And what we're finding is that it's a wing and a prayer survival time, according to those sort of lower points of the year when tourism hospitality business are affected, particularly those sort of winter periods. And what we're finding is that they're waiting for the big occasion. They're waiting for the Easters. They're waiting for the summer holidays, the school holidays, where they can boost up their resources again. And this is impacting at just a time when that might well affect it. So I can see a large number being threatened. I can see a small number being precarious. I can see a certain number going under.
And what kind of time have we got, do you think, before we start to see some of those victims? Is it immediate, or have we got maybe a month or two to provide them with that liquidity?
I really sort of don't want to speculate on that. I think it's difficult for us to tell. Each business is different, the model is different, but they are really all up against it. So, I mean, firstly, the first 3 months are crucial because the first month with their feet, and I understand why that's happening. But there has to become, even within the middle of an illness of this sort, there has to become a degree of normality where behaviour sort of settles down, and then there has to be a sort of an upward curve at another point. And we just have to hope that together with the resources behind a lot of experience in our industry and with government support, that we're able to put it all together as a picture and manage to sail through it. But the evidence of the last week or so is showing this is going to be extremely hairy. And it will happen sooner rather than later if we don't get that mixture right.
And David, if you had that magic wand and that funding stream was coming through, where would that funding specifically go? How would that be best utilised?
Well, what we've got to do is help restore business confidence, and that can't be done in the current climate. I accept that, but that's what has to be done. We've got exceptional product in a large number of these iconic hotels, as I mentioned, that are figureheads in communities, and people know them and they trust them and they respect them. They come back there regularly. They use them for their social meetings, their Friday lunch times, their get-togethers. So I think that there's residually a healthiness about a lot of the businesses and their relationship with their customers. What we've got to do is to go from A to B, and the gap in the middle at the moment is the way that the businesses have not got the resource to be able to maintain, first of all, business life in normality, and secondly, the caliber that is needed to be done to be able to keep the competition at bay. You know, you need to keep your best staff. You need modernising and investing. Well, current climate with the resources that they've got, investment is going to be at a minimum. So we're looking at, that's the long-term picture. Short-term, we just need to make sure that our message is getting across, and we definitely don't sort of panic or raise unnecessary expectations. We're not in that game. We report regularly and sensibly and soberly to government about where we are, and it's a fair exchange of information, and we behave responsibly. This is different to any of the 20 years that I can remember working with the industry, in that it's totally unprecedented, it's totally unexpected, and we just don't know what's going to happen around the corner. And so the business confidence needs to be brought back, and measures need to be responsive to when the industry calls for it. There needs to be that mutuality in action that brings together the public purse and the public face of our business.
David, thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.